Hello and welcome to the Tools in the Shed podcast. It's a podcast powered by CarsGuide. We're ready to rip into car stuff that has caught our eye this week. Now, I'm CarsGuide senior journalist Richard Berry, and with me is CarsGuide journalist Tom White.
Yo.
And key contributor Mr. Peter Anderson.
I just contribute keys.
And very good keys you do contribute. Now, look, unfortunately, James Cleary is in hospital. This is following a Halloween outfit malfunction. So, look, our thoughts are going out to him and his family right now. But look, we're going to push on. Best wishes to you, JC. I hope the pumpkin comes off and all of that. But look, this week...
I thought they just painted his head orange.
It wasn't just paint. No, this week we are looking at lovable sales losers. We're talking about those cars we reckon are damn good, but they're just not bought as much as they should be. And we're also going to be talking about what test vehicles are in our CarsGuide garage. And we'll check on the man who says he's going to create a city on Mars and make up the rules himself there in MuskWatch. So stay with us. But first of all, we're going to go to our feedback. It's one of the most popular sections of our CarsGuide podcast. We've got, first of all, a long-time listener. Now, I think he's still in Australia as well, but he's actually from overseas originally. He's on holiday here. It's Dekouke or Dekook, as he pronounces it. I think it's actually Dekouke. You know, what would I know? His response is, "Wow, mates, such a quality improvement. Good on you. Have you actually recorded and stitched your contributions together this time around?" It's hard to tell. I think he might be being sarcastic. Do you reckon? There's a bit of that there? I'm detecting it because the next feedback comment was from Max, and it simply says, "Can you dudes seriously expense charge CarsGuide for some microphones?" Now, Max, you'll be happy to know. There we have it. We listen to what the people say. We've all been given new mics by Jared. Jared's basically the office Siri. You just ask him anything and he makes it happen. You just go, "Hey, Jared, we need microphones." And we got them. So we listen. Thank you, Max. We're all going to be mic'd up. We've predicted that your next question is, well, why don't you have them plugged in now? And that's because we're motoring journalists and we don't know how to do anything else. Apart from Peter Anderson, who's actually a tech professional as well as being a motoring journalist. We'll work out how to put those in soon. I'm talking to the box now. It doesn't seem to be doing anything, but we'll work out how that works. We've got more comments from Peter Richardson. He says, now this is in relation to a story which we covered last week. Byron Matthew-Darkis wrote the story and it was talking about the future of Mitsubishi. And it was the main topic of conversation in last week's podcast. Now, Peter Richardson's written, there's a massive difference between a car brand from an unpopular country undertaking nuclear testing and a company connected to a state that actively copies designs, disregarding intellectual property, reverse engineering everything from fighter jets to cars. Thank you, Peter. We've got Hammer Rocks. Now, Hammer's been a long-time listener and definitely not a first-time caller. He's an always-time caller. We love Hammer. Hammer says, it's a shame what's happening to Mitsubishi. I'm a fan of the brand. I've owned two Pajeros and two Lancers. And now it's slowly being cannibalized by its new parents. I don't think they realize the true equity the brand has. Looking back at nostalgic Mitsubishi memories, who can forget the Black Stallion? And that was one in Cannonball Run movies with Jackie Chan on board, along with the guy who played Jaws in the James Bond movies. My personal memories with Mitsubishis include my uncle having an 80s champagne gold-coloured Star Wagon, complete with the typical 80s decals and striping and 80s brown interior.
I feel like this is like a really common thing, right? Like everyone knows someone or has owned at least one Mitsubishi, right? Like,
our family had four.
No, really?
Six.
Yeah. What? No.
L300,
yes.
2 Sigmas.
Yes.
4 Magnas.
Well, this is the thing, because the love for Mitsubishi is strong. Midas Touchy. Now, thank you, Hammer, for that. And if you want to read Hammer's comment, it's huge, and he knows what he's talking about. But we're going to move on to Midas Touchy. He says, I'm still waiting for Mitsubishi to return to Adelaide to make a new 380 that's 150 kilograms lighter with a 6-speed manual and all-wheel drive. We can all dream.
There's a lot of that.
I'd like to see that happening as well. Jethro X says Mitsubishi needs to bring back the Evo with 5 exclamation marks. Wow,
just one X will do.
Yeah,
just one X.
They could do an Evo ASX.
Yeah.
They keep threatening that, and I think they take one look at the platform and go, more sense.
No, yeah. Jim Danik. Now, Jim has commented several times, and it's over the course of several days as well. So the first comment from Jim says, so Mitsubishi lovers can look forward to rear drum brakes on their 2020's new car, similar to the Nissan Duke, and they spelled Duke with a D. A couple of days later, he's then replied, I think, to himself, saying, speaking of alliances with Nissan, enjoyed David Morley's story about the RB30 engine and the VL Commodore. I hear inline sixes are making a return. Good story by David. If you haven't read it, read Morley's review.
There's also a lot of interesting stuff, just quickly on that inline six topic, about how manufacturers were moving to V6s in the mid 2000s for packaging and safety issues, and then now it's funny, you see it bounce right back to straight sixes because they need to package in all the hybrid systems next to an engine and all this sort of stuff. So
absolutely, and
much easier.
Modularization,
yeah. And look, there's something very magical about it. It's actually not magic at all. It's all mechanical about a straight six, which makes it perfectly balanced. A really, really good engine,
especially in 3-liter form.
Oh, very nice.
BMW.
Yes.
Reco has commented saying, this is a big if. Now, and he's written a giant if. Now, I don't know whether he means the if's big, but he says, this is a big if. But what if Mitsubishi had decided to build the 2005 Triton in South Australia instead of the 380? Would it have caused a domino effect? Would there still be manufacturing in Australia? Imagine Ranger, BT50 being built in Campbellfield, Hilux in Altona, Colorado and Elizabeth, maybe even F-150 Tundra Silverado. All right, time to snap back to reality, he says.
That's a bit much. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think I think that issue is down to shipping rates and stuff worldwide, and where obviously labor cost helps as well. But yeah, that's why they're all built in Thailand now.
Yeah. Well.
Now he's an ASX lover. His name is Sukhoi Romantic. From 5 days ago, and he says journalists always rag on the ASX for being old and ordinary to drive and so on. And he says, I rented one a few years ago and it drove fine. It was comfy. The CVT was fine. It was practical. And I priced one up later and it was like only 24K, he says. Given they are still one of the best looking SUVs around, basically, do you all need an SUV to do? All you need to do is this. Basically, it has all you need an SUV to do. They're cheap. I think Mitsubishi should be applauded for milking all the money it can out of it. Unless you're planning on testing multiple SUVs, and then there's something in brackets, you probably go on looks and price to go to Mitsubishi. Now, he's got a point. It is one of the most popular small SUVs in Australia.
Yes, it is.
It's a good size. It's a big, small SUV. It doesn't look bad. Is that all it means? And it's very well priced.
The new one doesn't look bad. I think it hasn't looked great for a while, but I think the current one improved on that quite a lot. But I mean, he is right in a way, isn't he? Is like what we want and what consumers want.
Absolutely.
Like it's totally like being obviously if people say this, every motoring journalist is like an enthusiast. If it was up to us, every car in the world would be a green rear-wheel drive wagon with a 6-speed manual, Yeah. So like the fact that this Mitsubishi just they keep making this car, but it is all people need, and it's okay at everything. It's just not great at any one.
Oh no, it's not okay at driving. It's terrible to drive. The multi-link rear end is a complete waste of time. Just put torsion beams back there and make some more money on it, so you can afford to redo the next one better. Because it rides like this, and why? And the steering's too light, and when in the manual,
the steering is
you get a dead leg from all the buzzing through the pedals.
Yeah.
The one thing that made it worthwhile was all-wheel drive, and you can't get that now.
The thing is, I don't think it matters, Peter. Because
absolutely not.
We're too close to this. We like the way a car feels. When we describe driving, we talk about its ride as a bit busy and uncomposed. I mean, really? Let us know, people. Does the average everyday person really care how uncomposed a ride is? Or is it really just a tool that they use, and it doesn't matter if it's not particularly great? It's just well priced and doesn't look bad.
Well, look at the success of Hilux. It's definitely not the best riding. It's definitely not the best riding tub in that class. But
it
sells so many of them.
I mean, and look, the thing about the ASX is, I always say to people, you buy what you want. You want to get an ASX, get an ASX. Like, I only warn people off cars that are death traps. And what car is a death trap anymore? So,
The one I drive a 1951 Ford. It doesn't have any seat belts or airbags.
That's a death trap.
That's a death trap. But it's a consensual death trap. I've agreed to drive this car. Yeah. Now we've got Robert Ciroli or Ciroli, depending on which part of Italy you're from. Says it's a sad day. Mitsubishi alliance with Renault, Nissan. Nissan, a once great manufacturer of reliable, bulletproof cars that could rival Toyota in reliability. Unfortunately, since it merged with Renault, it has suffered numerous issues, e.g., the CVT and catastrophic failures. He says in various other places. Look, there's the warranty, which is good. But he says the Renault traffic there has been reported more cases of DSG fail and turbo diesel engine, breaking down. I won't use the exact words that he says. So it's safe to say the new Mitsubishi Express will suffer the same serious issues as the traffic. I'm a fan of Mitsubishi, he says, as I've had a Lancer and a couple of Magnas. All have been fantastic cars with zero issues. So basically, he's saying the alliance is going to bring in a whole lot of problems that the brand never had when it was building its own cars. What do you guys reckon?
Well, I mean, stuff happens in all car companies, and you can point to any car company and say, "Oh, these things happen." This Italian supercar catches fire. So I think people like to cherry pick reliability issues that aren't really as widespread as the reality might suggest. And in the end, reliability issues are actually less to do with these days, less to do with engineering and more to do with how the car maker responds to it. So if you've got a lemon and the car maker goes, right, we'll buy it back from you, give you another one, great. And that's, because cars are enormously complex things and far more complex than they were even 10 years ago. So I think, while this person makes good points, it's a bit selective, I think. But Mitsubishi can't survive on its own. That's why they didn't go in because they could do it on their own. They went in because they knew that to have platform sharing and engine sharing and all that is going to help them survive.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the reality of today's world. Like, platform sharing is a necessity now. Like, to have the scale, to have the safety systems, the transmissions, the underpinnings, the multimedia suites, like even things like that, to have all develop that on your own, you need to be a giant. You need to be Volkswagen. But for the companies that don't have that, they need to be locked into an alliance. And I think, look, like Mitsubishi, the tough one with them is what do they have in the pipeline? Even in the alliance, is there something you can point out that you go, okay, that's going to be a cool Mitsubishi, right? Like,
cool Mitsubishi hasn't been a thing for a while, has it?
Not for a long time.
Sadly.
Platform sharing, as you said, Tom, it is a very common thing, but it's not just the smaller manufacturers or those struggling manufacturers that need to do it. We've got Toyota sharing platforms with BMW. You've got the Z4 Supra. You've got Toyota and Subaru sharing platforms as well. So it makes sense. Look, it's worrying days, I guess, for Mitsubishi moving away from what it used to be. Look, Jim Danik is not worried, though. He's replied again, and he says this time, moving away from Mitsubishi, I love the Venetian blinds on Byron's Morris 1100. Maybe you could do a show on car accessories you can no longer get. Here's my Yes. He's replied again another few days later saying, at least the Mitsubishi brand is still around. Can't say that much about a much loved Australian brand. Yep. And then he's replied just a day ago saying, Scooby says hello, Lana. And now Lana is Byron's Labrador, who made an appearance, I think, in last week's podcast. So Scooby says hello. I'm not sure if Scooby's a dog. I guess it would be. It could be Jim Downick's dog. But anyway, that that's the feedback for this week. If you want us to read out your feedback next week, write in, leave it the comments in the section of the YouTube comments, and we'll read them out.
We're not dog Tinder though.
No, it's not dog Tinder.
It's not a meet and greet for dogs.
No, it's not. No, I mean, we all love dogs. Anyway, hello, Scooby. Now, let us move on to our story of the week, the one that we're covering here. It's been written by Lana's owner, Byron Matthew Darkus. Again,
Venetian blind fancier.
That's right, Venetian blind fancier. EA Falcon purveyor. Byron's written
territory booster.
Byron's written a story on all the cars that we really like, which just aren't really bought. Now, we all know the Mustang GT is bought like hotcakes, and the Subaru XV is extremely popular as well. He's written a story, which you can read at the CarsGuide website right now, that looks at all those cars which are considered to be sales losers. He's named a couple here and alternatives to these best sellers. The first one he mentions is the Subaru XV, the 2-liter all-wheel drive one. Now, he says, look, you know, all you Peter and myself and Tom, we've all driven the Subaru XV. I think it's a pretty good thing. Yes, it's got a CVT. We're not going to go into that really, but he says the alternative would be a Ford Focus Active. Now, for those who don't know, this is basically a Ford Focus hatch on stilts. It's slightly raised to give it a little bit more ground clearance and give it a bit more of an SUV feel. Now, look, full disclaimer, I went to the Ford Focus launch a couple of years ago and it wasn't available to drive, and I have not driven the Ford Focus Active at all. Have either of you driven that car?
Yes.
What's it like?
It's just a slightly higher Focus, which is to say it's a very good car. I think the Focus is one of the most underrated cars on the road today in all specifications. But I particularly like the Focus ST line because I think it's well priced, great engine, great transmission, and all of those things apply to the Active. It's just a bit taller. It's still got really good steering. I think it looks great, although the one I drove was khaki green. It didn't look great. Well, actually, it was more olive drab. But it's a terrific car, and it's got everything for the money. Absolutely everything. And, you know, the Sync 3 system's really good. The 8-speed automatic's really good. The 1.5-litre 3-cylinder is superb. I think it's a really good car, and I would have that over the XV unless I absolutely needed the all-wheel drive.
Your thoughts, Tom?
I 100% agree here. One thing I like about Ford right now is they bring in cars, and it's tough because, you know, these Ford Europe products are expensive. There's no two ways about it. But that car in particular, I think, is good because compared to the XV, it is exciting. Like that 3-cylinder engine is really good. That transmission is really good. The interior is different. Like, you know, not everyone's going to like it, but it's different, but good. Like, I like the quality of everything in there, and it's fun to drive. And that's something that's quite rare in that kind of lifted hatch segment, because there's a lot of like thrashy old 2-liters and stuff that are just kind of you know, whatever. Yeah, it does everything, but it's just there to drive. Whereas like a 3-cylinder turbo, how much fun is that?
Yeah, and it sounds good. It's just a good car.
What about its off-road capability? Now, look, the XV isn't a Toyota Land Cruiser. It's, you know, but at the same time, I've taken the XV, the all-wheel drive, places that I just don't think you'd be able to get an Active, Ford Focus Active. At the launch of that car, Subaru were quite ambitious and took us on this, you know, this 4-wheel drive track. It was an old quarry, and I was, you know, pretty impressed by how capable this car, which probably would spend most of its time just on, you know, in the suburbs, in driveways and, you know, leafy suburbs, but it's actually pretty handy on dirt and down hills, and then the ground clearance I think is about 215 millimeters. I'm not 100% sure I'm pretty sure that the Ford Focus Active isn't going to be able to sort of match it there. But I do know that the engineers of the Ford Focus Active went to a lot of trouble of not just putting the Active just on stilts, like I said before. They've actually re-engineered the steering knuckles so that it actually handled and drove and rode like a car, and not just like a wobbly SUV. Did you find that, Peter, when you were driving it? That was quite.
Yeah, no, it's very well tied down. Look, on the point of off-roading, the vast majority of OXV owners rarely do more than the dirt road into Nunes.
Yeah.
So I'm not really like that. Let's be honest. Like that's the reality, and that's okay. I'm not having a crack at people. And the Active could handle that no problem. And the Active has got the off-road modes like the two-wheel drive Peugeots do.
Yeah.
That are black magic. No,
Yes.
you're not going to be able to do some serious off-road, as serious off-roading as the XV. And look, I know the XV is very capable, but by the same token, an Audi Q5 is surprisingly capable off-road.
Yeah.
But the Active, I think, is for the 99% of time you spend in the city, I think the Active is the better car by a fair
Yeah, actually, it's funny because a friend of mine was recently asking, what she should buy, and she was like looking at hatchbacks, but she said, "Look, I've got this problem. I'm really concerned about clearance because her family owns a farm out somewhere." And she said, I'm really worried that I'm just going to be scraping bumpers and stuff. And I just thought, Subaru XV. It's a hatch for all intents and purposes, but it's lifted up. It has that clearance. It has that all-wheel drive if it gets a bit muddy up on that unsealed farm surface. And if you at least get the L, it's got all the safety as well.
That's true.
Well, that's the thing. The Active has got all the safety. The Focus Active's got all the safety, and that sticker price is nothing like what you'll pay. Just quite.
No, that's right.
Twist arms, and you will get a very hefty discount. And I know this from people on Twitter who I've suggested that car to go and look at, and they've gone, I love it, and I bought it, and I didn't pay that much for it.
Absolutely. Just for people who want to know, the list price for the Ford Focus Active is $30,490, and that particular grade of XV is $29,240. But as Peter said, go to your dealership around about now. If you were to go at the end of the month, you will be absolutely guaranteed to
tell them you also drove an XV just before.
Yeah, exactly. Tell them Peter sent you.
That's right.
Now, dealership was it again, Peter?
Peter Anderson Autos.
That's right.
Now, this is one I don't know I agree with. The second one that Byron's got here, the alternatives. He's got a Ford Mustang GT Fastback for $64,190 versus a Kia Stinger GT for $60,990. Now,
I'd have the Stinger.
Would you?
100%.
No.
Yeah.
Get out.
I love the Mustang. I love it, but
me too.
I'd have the Mustang in a heartbeat.
I would have a Kia Sorento.
Sorry,
but I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have a Kia Stinger GT over a Mustang GT. No way.
Yeah, I would.
I mean, I know it's probably built better than a Mustang, but I just love 339 kilowatt, 556 Newton meter, 5 liter V8 with a manual.
Look, it's funny because I had a Mustang pretty recently, and it was a 5 liter V8. It was an auto. And I love the romance of it. I love that it was just completely unhinged and traction was questionable at all times. And the fact that it was just like you sit in it and it's so absurd. It's like it's just you and there's all this car.
Yeah.
It's like, why? But I love it for that. It's, it is such a classically romantic car. But then at the end of the day, what would I prefer to live with for the money? The Stinger. Any day.
And Peter, you feel the same way, don't you?
Yeah. The Stinger's great. And, there's a very, very hard marker in our house, and that's my wife.
Yep.
And she absolutely adores the Stinger. She's like, if we had to buy another car, if everyone came to their senses and stopped letting me write about cars, if we had to buy a car, then the Stinger would be it. And one of the reasons she likes it so much is she was taught to drive on a steady diet of BMWs, and we own a steady diet of BMWs. And she says it feels like her old 330DM Sport, which is one of the best cars we ever owned. And it has that BMW on the road feel with that glorious engine. It's a terrific engine.
It does feel like solid. and planted when you drive it. And I've got to say, it's, the 272 kilowatt, 510 newton meter, 3.3 liter twin turbo V6. It's a good thing. And it's one of those things that you just can't imagine Kia did. It's sort of so out of character for them. But it is a really good thing. Personally, I'd go the Mustang, but I do love that Stinger as well.
And I adore the Mustang.
Yeah. If you picked the Mustang, you wouldn't be wrong.
No,
that's for sure.
That's right.
We're not sitting here saying like, no, you have to have the Stinger. Like, I'm just saying, if it was a car that I was going to live with,
and for a family, it's just true. The Stinger's so good.
Yeah. Look, when you bring the family aspect into it, and especially the crash test rating, which goes with the Mustang as well, and the child protection in the back. Yeah,
7-year warranty on the Stinger. Like, that's absurd for a performance car.
Yeah,
it is. Now, here's one which is going to be very close to Peter Anderson's heart. Byron has said a good alternative to a Mercedes-Benz GLC 200, which lists for $70,300, is a Peugeot 3008 GT line for almost half the price at $47,990. What, Peter? Now, what do you reckon?
I love the 3008. Look, it's not perfect.
You do.
The steering's too light. And there's a bit of lag in both the transmission and the engine, but it looks fantastic. It's such a pretty car. The GLC, not a work of art, let's face it. Not ugly, just not a work of art. You look at that, like that 3008, every time you look at it, you think, I have bought something really cool. And the interior is top notch, and it's got better over the years as well. So I remember the first 3008 I drove, it was a bit ropey, but it's now so well put together. Just some beautiful detailing and that really cool digital dash, which again, a bit on the slow side. I mean, but you only notice that when it's switching between the modes you can set up. And yes, the media system is properly ropey, but it's so nice. It's just a great car. And for the money you're saving over the Merc, and again, I think the 3008 and most Peugeots are criminally underrated. I just think they're such good cars. They are overpriced in certain aspects, but the more I think about the 3008 GT line and the diesel GT, they're not badly priced at all for what you're getting.
Tom?
Inclined to agree. This is what French cars should be about, right? They should look different. They should look cool. They should have weird interiors where things don't quite work. That's buying a French car, and I love that they're doing that again. And in terms of driving it, like Peugeots are good to drive again. Like and look at the 308. That car is so old now, but it's still so good to drive. The segment's so competitive, and if the 3008 even emulates a little bit of that behind the wheel compared to its competitors, it's enough.
Absolutely.
And I can't believe we still don't have the plug-in hybrid version, which is actually a rocket. It's really quick.
Hey, look, all three people who would have bought one, I'm sure, are also missing out.
Byron, now looking at the rest of Byron's story, he's got another couple of alternatives. We can just flash through those now. He reckons a good alternative to a BMW 330i, which is $74,900, is
not wrong. You can't go wrong with either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is a Jaguar XE P300 R-Dynamic Black. Now, I drove the XE at its launch, and this car is excellent. That chassis is, and we tortured it, is really, really impressive. I went in with a whole lot of, personal bias against the brand, and I came out going, I'd have one of those.
How good is it? It weighs nothing.
It's a brilliant machine. Peter, you've driven it.
Recently.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a terrific thing, and it looks great. Yeah. And with this recent facelift, it's going to fix the in control or whatever, in touch or whatever it was called, got good by the end, but PV Pro was heaps better. So that's really good. And they've just lifted the interior a bit. But and they've also, I think one of the reasons the XE didn't sell, and it may not make any difference, is you could choose from 240,000 of them. Now there's two.
That's right.
The P300 is brilliant. It's a great engine.
They admitted, the Jaguar PR team admitted at the launch of that car that there was too much choice.
Yeah.
It's too much.
There was, like as you said, the permutations of what you could get in terms of engine and grade and trim. It was just ridiculous, and I think Range Rover needs to sort of simplify their range as well. It's out of control. Tom, you're a bit of a Jag fan, aren't you?
Yeah, but you know what? This isn't the car I'd pick here.
Really?
And when the XE came out, I was like, yes, this is the car they need. Like, it's in the right segment. I hope it's really good to drive. And then when the first one came out, it just sort of fell short in so many areas. And I know they've updated it. I know this one's new. I haven't driven this new one. But still in this segment, to me, this segment is a little bit about look. So there's two cars I would consider instead of this one, right? Genesis G70 is one of them. Because it's affordable. It's relatively for that segment. It looks great and it drives awesome as well. Like talking about the Stinger, that's the same car. Even the 2-liter is fun to drive. Even the 2-liter turbo, right? But the one I really like in this segment, I saw one on the road the other day and I was like, Volvo V60 T8 R design.
Yes, very much so.
I haven't driven a Volvo in so long. I wouldn't even know where to start with that.
It looks incredible.
So it is, and the wagon version, brilliant as well.
It stopped me on the road. I was like, what a good looking car.
Actually, I'm surprised that wasn't Byron's pick, but you all know my BMW bias, so I'd probably end up buying the Beamer, but I'd have a good hard long look at the XE before I bought the Beamer.
During Car of the Year discussions last year, that Volvo was a point of contention. It was such a good car, and we were really torn about it. It scored incredibly well. I'm surprised as well that Byron hasn't included it. But that's the end of the list that we've got to now. If you want to read the full story by Byron, take a look at it. It's great. It's at the CarsGuide website now. But what we're going to talk about now are the cars that are in our garage. Now, Tom, you've been driving a Corolla sedan. Now,
it's a hatch.
Oh, it's a hatch. It's a hatch.
Close enough. Yeah.
But a completely different demographic. Yeah. Now, let me just explain to our listeners and watchers and readers here. We normally get cars on a week loan. And it's like speed dating. You've got to get to know the car really, really quickly. And you've got to write a review about it. But we also get long-term loans as well. Now, Tom has got the Corolla hatch, and he's had this for, how long have you had it for now, Tom?
I've had it for a month and a half.
A month and a half. And how long's the loan for?
The loan's for 3 months, so I've got it until about midway through December. So it really gives us a good buyer's perspective in terms of what you're going to experience as an owner. So, Tom, what's the Corolla hatch been like to live with over the last month or so? Well, it's funny because going into this review, I was a little bit of a Corolla skeptic because the last two cars were just so drab and boring. I knew this one was better because it's not as though I haven't driven this car. And I know the TNGA underpinnings are really good and hybrid, yada, 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 whatever. And the one I've got is the top spec ZR Hybrid hatch. And so it's got everything. It gives you a real good sampler of everything that the Corolla range has to offer. And the funny thing about it is, every time I hop in it, I'm like, it just drives so nicely. It does. It's not fast. No. It's not the best steering in the segment. It's not there's not one thing about it where I go, that's amazing. It's just so well put together. As a complete thing, it's just lovely.
You know what it is? It's got a Lexus vibe. I think it feels like a Lexus to drive. It feels like a Lexus to sit in. But then you look at the dash and go, oh no, definitely a Toyota. But it's a terrific. It's a Corolla that I'm happy to recommend to people.
Yeah, and that was the thing because we've been looking in that segment, and we had an i30 before, which was a great car, and we were looking at getting another i30. But now I'm shaken. Now I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I want the i30 compared to this now. This is such a nice to drive car, and the hybrid system is addictive. It makes fuel saving addictive. It's so good.
Yeah, I get 4 liters per 100 Ks on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
We all know what a heavy right foot I've got.
Yeah. So mine's doing 4.8, and I'm only sometimes trying to hyper mile. It gets addictive because they've got the little eco indicator, and when you press the accelerator, it goes up like this, and it's got 3 little bars, right? And one is eco, and then there's a middle section, and then there's the power section. Power. Oh, it's PWR, right? Yeah. But the thing is, if you accelerate, that first section is reserved for just the electric motor. So if you can try, like what I find myself doing all the time is like conditioning myself to just try and use the electric motor as much as possible. So I'm driving like a freaking grandma in this thing off the lights. Like the lights go green. I'm just like,
yeah.
And the people behind me are like,
Get moving. Yeah.
I love how into this you are, Tom. Like it's just a hybrid car.
He's a hypermiler. We need Mal in here to talk to us about hypermiling. But yeah.
Well, no, as well, because I've been driving a lot of hybrids lately. So I've had a lot of plugins. I've had a lot of, and I just love the whole aspect of like these completely different like motors working together to do this thing, and like how they meld together and how they work together is fascinating. So yeah, it's a really cool car to drive.
It's a really, when you drive hybrids from other different brands and then you get into a Toyota hybrid, you suddenly realize how much of a master they are of the technology.
20 years of answers there.
That's right. Well, when did Prius come out? 1997. And so they've had 20 years exactly, Peter, of perfecting this. And you've got manufacturers who are only just getting into it now. And my goodness, the difference in the seamless transition between petrol and the electric motor is, in a Toyota hybrid, it is outstanding.
Yeah. And you drive an Ionic hybrid, series hybrid, and it's
it's exactly what I was talking about without saying it. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very good, but you can hear.
Yeah.
Okay, there's still some work to do on
this.
Well,
that's the thing that like makes me think, like, even just one generation change. Like you drive the last gen hybrid Camry, and it's like the level of refinement is just in another world to the new TNGA stuff. People have been in hybrid taxis before, so they've experienced it. It goes, and
that was a very good impersonation.
I was in the car for a
minute.
I was in it too. I could smell
the vinyl.
Just drop me off at the lights, please, Tom. Just.
I have to just get the FPOS machine and act really annoyed about it.
I could hear a Melbourne cabbie asking me to show him how to get to the airport on the map. That's how good it is.
But yeah, no, the new ones are just so smooth, and there are times when I don't even realize that the engine's on in the Corolla. It's great, and
very good.
It's an accessible level of electrification for most people, and that's why they're so popular.
Small boot though, and not a lot of rear legroom though in the hatch. The
doors don't open very far in the back.
They don't. They just open about that much. You've got to sort of squeeze through.
The foot, like the space to kind of pass your foot through to get in, is actually really tight. And I think there's no armrest or cup holders back there.
No, I have to double check. It might be spec.
Bottle holders in the door, but
it's got little ones. Little bottle holders in the door.
Yeah.
The sedan version though, more legroom, more boot space. So if that's what you're after, you still want the hybrid powertrain, but you want a little bit more boot space and legroom, go the sedan. And the sedan doesn't look
dorky.
It doesn't.
It's pretty dorky.
I like it.
The interior dorky too. The seats in that
not.
ZR
From behind. Have you seen the sedan from behind?
I have seen the sedan.
No, because you know what gets me here, right? There used to be lots of good mid-size hatch-based sedans, right? They used to because the way I think of it is like, I don't know, maybe it was almost like close to 50% of what that market would buy, but now it's not. It's a niche, so they've taken a real downhill in the last couple of years. Serato sedan, that's a good-looking sedan.
Yeah,
in that segment.
Come on, Richard.
Definitely better than the hatch. That's for sure. Now, Peter, you've been in a hatch. Something very tasty from the Volkswagen family. Tell us about that.
Volkswagen Golf GTI TCR.
Woo!
Now, I know why Tom's nodding, because he had it last week.
Mm-hmm.
It is really good. It's over 50 grand, and I thought, oh, that's a bit much for a sticker's job. But then I read the spec sheet and realized it's got the Golf R engine, stainless steel exhaust, tweaked steering, decent set of Continental tires. We also get the full fat TCR here, whereas Europe doesn't get everything. There's a whole mechanical package bolt hole you can go down about. We get a 6-speed and Europe gets a 7-speed. But my goodness, it's a good car. It is so much fun. And actually, I don't think the fun is as much about the Golf R engine, which is 213 kilowatts, which is a good 30 kilowatts up on the basic car. It's just a really good chassis. The turn-in is like, it's amazing, and it just feels terrific to drive. And and it does everything. And I think, it just reinforces how good a job everyone's done to try and catch up to the Golf. And then Volkswagen just drops a 213 kilowatt motor, makes a few clicks, and it's like, So we talked about hot hatches a little while ago, and you made a joke about the i30N plastics cutting you if you're not careful.
Yes.
And that's so I enjoy driving the i30 more, but the Golf GTI TCR, which does cost a lot more money, but costs about the same as a spec'd up Renault Sport Megane. And I will keep calling it Renault Sport Megane until the day I die instead of Megane R.S.
Yes.
The quality of the interior and the build of the interior, even though it hasn't got everything, it's such an impressive car. And it looks brilliant. I can take or leave the hexagon stuff down the side, but yeah, really enjoyed that a lot.
I like how you say, as the others catch up, it's almost like Volkswagen has looked over its shoulder and just like done a Usain Bolt and just gone.
And well, it's taken a while to do it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's taken a while to do it, but it's just kind of done a mic drop for the last of the 7.5s and gone, hey, you know what's happening in the next model? The Club Sport has that engine, and that's a standard model throughout in the GTI range. As the TCR is not limited, but because of the Golf 8 coming along, the Club Sport, and I'd have the TCR over a Civic Type R as much as I love the Civic Type R.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Although Tom, you are a Type R. Are you a Type R fanboy?
Not particularly.
Not particularly.
No, he's got far too mature a head on his shoulders for that ridiculous wing.
But you have driven the TCR, Tom, haven't you? You had it just last week or the week before.
Yeah, and I had exactly the same reaction to Peter. When I picked it up, I was like, it's a sticker pack. And then I looked at the spec sheet and I was like, oh,
oh my word.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing about it, what a send off for the 7.5. Like, we could have done a sticker pack, but instead we've done this, and it's a thing of wonder. Like the R engine and the way they've put it all together, it's less about being the best and more about being exciting. Like having the extra power from the R, but they have like detuned the torque as well. And because it's still front wheel drive, and I got to say, I was expecting it to be a little bit more out of
monster.
Exactly, because I had the Focus ST the week before that, and I was expecting a repeat of that. I was expecting just completely unhinged, because the ST is completely unhinged.
Yeah, unhinged.
And I was expecting a repeat of that, but the Golf is like, it's sublime. Like you throw it into a corner and you feel that limited slip diff do its magic, and you feel the suspension lean in just the right amount. And then, having 6 speeds instead of 7, that lets you really sort of ride those gears out. And I think that was kind of the point of it, trying to extract a better balance between
the
peak power and
filter or something. So got lucky. We just got lucky.
Yeah, we just got lucky.
But and again, when we were talking about this a few weeks ago, Richard, I said that the Golf needed to be more fun, and it's almost like Volkswagen had a time machine, saw me saying that, and go, here's the Volkswagen Golf GTI that you want, and it is exactly what I want.
Yeah.
And what I do like about this one too is, like the i30N, and this is a bit niche, but if you're in mid corner and you realize, okay, I need a bit more, you can give it more. It'll rotate a bit, but then grip again, and you're like, that's what I want. I want that predictability when I'm pressing on, within reasonable limits, of course. And it does everything it's supposed to do, and then you turn it back down to comfort and you motor home.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to raise you your Golf GTI TCR and put down a Porsche 718 Spider that has been in. we've lost Mr. Anderson. There he is. That's been the car that's been in my garage. It lists for $201,890. This is the thing about our job. We often drive cars we will never be able to afford. But I'm glad I can. 4-litre naturally aspirated flat 6, making 309 kilowatts and 420 Newton meters, and it had the manual 6-speed as well. It was a week I won't forget in a hurry.
As you're back,
I drove the wheels off it like any person should. 0 to 104.4 seconds, top speed of 301 kilometers an hour. I can't confirm that. I didn't get it up there. It is loud. The ride is firm. The roof doesn't fold backwards or forwards as easy as it probably could, but it is superb to drive. It's absolutely superb to drive. It feels like a spaceship. It is just, you throw it in. I've took it to the usual place I take all my sporty cars, and unbelievable. Unbelievable handling.
The Broadway Centre car park is very hard on cars, and I think you've done a really good job there. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. I mean, actually, it did go to the Broadway car park as well, and it's quite short, so it's easy to park. It's hard to park with the roof down, but if you put the roof down, you can actually just look over it. Now, look, the roof has this folding mechanism, which is only part mechanical, and that's only the first part. So, and the last part, you pop a button, and the little hook unlatches the roof at the top of the windscreen, and then you've got to fold it back yourself. But because it's a spider, it's got these fancy wings which come down over those of speedster buttresses at the back of it, and you've got to pop those wings out, and you've got to and you've got to fold, and it takes. I thought it was going to take 30 seconds. I filmed myself doing it. It took about 5 minutes.
It's a bit Lotus Elise. There's some Lotus Elise vibes there.
Yeah. So look, I mean, this is the thing. If Porsche can do cabriolets which have, automatic folding roofs, I'm just wondering why for, $201,000 they didn't get something which was mechanical or a little bit easier. It's a bit tricky, but I've got to say, look, that aside, brilliant. Look, after driving it, you get out of the car and you're exhausted and you're sore because it feels like you feel like you're being shaken like this the whole time, and then someone pours you out of it when you get out of it, and then you're a
leaves the ice behind.
You're a human organ cocktail. You are, and it's loud. Like you start the car and it scares you. Like it has it has a Porsche keyword, so your thing goes in the thing. You start the car and it goes like this, and it scares you and everybody else in the neighborhood.
Now, for those of you who are audio only, this needs an audio description. Richard is shaking a bottle. Richard is throwing a bottle.
This is the sound
of Richard shaking the bottle.
That's the sound
Richard
of my
is also
organ.
very animated.
And it's like you drive on a highway, and you know how sometimes there's those concrete barriers between you and the other cars, and the sound reverberating off the thing back into the car is you're like, and as well. So there's no sound damping or deadening or insulation, and this is how easy it is to hear everything on the outside. I was at the traffic lights just sitting there, and the car was just idling, and I hear, right, and I look over, and the guy beside me is whistling in his car, and even though my windows are up and the roof is on, I can hear him like he's sitting beside me in the car. So that was disconcerting. And I went from that, so I took that back to Porsche and I jumped into my next test car, and that was something at the other end of the scale. It was the Lexus 300h Luxury, and after the Spider, it was like an isolation tank.
It's like being on a cloud inside a nice thing.
I normally think these, high-range Camrys are, for boring people, but I tell you what, I actually love that car. It's so comfortable.
Cosseting.
It's so quiet, especially like having just got out of the Spider into that. It was like getting into a hot bath. I mean, the worst thing about that ES300H is that it is so comfortable. There's a risk that you might fall asleep because it's just like, I'm just going to get myself comfortable. It's just the handling is all right, but the ride, that platform is brilliant.
So quiet. But I think after the 718, a Lamborghini Huracan Performante was probably more comfortable.
Yeah, it's true. But I think the funny thing about the 718 is I was actually talking to the vice president of 911 and 718 lines a couple of months ago.
Were you? Yeah. Just at the Australia Club?
No, it was a press conference.
Right.
And he was saying people are saying, oh, the 911, it's getting really big and it's getting a bit heavy now. And, what do people do, if they want, that old school 911 feel, Porsche has a lot of these kind of old school fans. And he was saying, oh, just buy a 718 GT4. It's like that is effectively today's 911 from, the 80s,
Is that an Ewok, Peter?
It's Ralph from the Muppets.
Talking of Muppets, it's now time for
what a segue.
Mm-hmm.
Time for MuskWatch.
Yes. Oh, Elon Musk. He's been in on the tweets again as usual. Tweeting is thumbs off. Look, none of it is sensible, of course. No. In the last few hours, he's been tweeting about Jack in the Box. Now, Jack in the Box is a chicken restaurant in the US. I've eaten there. It's no KFC, that's for sure.
No, it really isn't.
It really isn't. But look, Elon thinks it's pretty good. So what he's got here is he's got. Now I was umming and erring about reading this out because I thought it was below us, but then I realized nothing's really below us. And he said, Jack in the Box should do double duty as a sperm donor clinic. Name is, and he's done the perfect emoji, which is that one. Like, what? What's going on there? And then he's followed that up with, truth be told, I've eaten it, JITB. I guess that's a abbreviation of Jack in Box, many times over the years, even the teriyaki bowl. And then he's followed that up again with, might buy a Jack in the Box footstool.
This is like a crap conversation you have with your friends, like when you're teenagers.
Yes, it is.
Like, what's the difference between a zinger burger and a KFC McChicken? Like it's just that kind of like it's just a dumb crap argument that you wouldn't have unless you were really bored and had nothing else to talk about.
Yeah, what the hell? Like, and as well, okay, so like just on that teenage boy sort of theme, he's tweeted like not long after that, hey, Tesla should make up, and he's done a flame emoji, cat girl robots. And then he's put a poll underneath it going, and the two options for the poll are absolutely or of course. And so, so of course, I ticked absolutely, and you get the results. And it says so far it's 82% for absolutely and 18% for of course.
You know what gets me about this? Like, imagine being one of the guys who builds like the computer systems in like a Model 3 or a Model Y, right? You're working on what is going to be the world's next, maybe most interesting electric car, right? And your work is art. It's everything. Yeah. You've done your whole career for this. And the boss of your company does this. It's sort of like, doesn't that spit on your legacy? I don't know.
Look, he's not just the boss of Tesla. He's the founder of the Boring Company, of OpenAI, of SpaceX. He is, he's the world's third richest man. Now, look, talking of SpaceX, it's been reported that there's a clause which is in the Starlink terms of service, which says that Starlink or SpaceX will not recognize Earth laws on Mars. Now, because we're journalists, I've actually went ahead and I actually dug up the terms of service from Starlink, and so I'll read this to you. It says, for services provided to or in orbit around the Earth or the Moon, these terms, any disputes arising between us, I'm looking around the slide, including disputes regarding, Tom, you're a lawyer, you'd know this, will be in accordance with the laws of the state of California. Now, this is the important bit. For services provided on Mars or in transit to Mars via Starship or other colonization spacecraft, the parties recognize Mars as a free planet and no Earth-based government has authority or sovereignty over Martian activities. Whoa! Peter.
Audio description, Peter is audibly rolling his eyes. So you know what I think about Elon. I think he's a libertarian douchebag. And this is exactly what these rich people want. They want a free-for-all on another planet. And this is no comment on Tesla or its cars or any of its employees, but he wants this this planet where it's all, hey man, we're libertarians. You just do what you want, and we won't have any governments building roads or nothing. And guess what? That doesn't work because that's not how humans work. And I was immediately put into mind of a story I read on the New Republic a little while ago, newrepublic.com. A review of a book called A Libertarian Walks into a Bear by Matthew Hongoltz Hetling, and it's
Walks
basically
into a bear.
Yeah,
It's like a joke.
Yeah, well, no.
Yeah.
So what happened was in this town, it's like this. It's all free, right? So there's no government intervention. So they stopped the mitigation for bears walking into town and basically mauling people. So basically, this town went libertarian and then fell to pieces because nobody took responsibility for potholes or murders, that kind of thing.
But I don't understand, Peter. Won't the free market sort out potholes?
Because the free market.
Surely a bigger, meaner pothole will come and take over from the smaller potholes.
That's right.
It's all going to end in tears, I think. But look,
well, at least it'll give them a water source on Mars when they work out that the water there is contaminated with some dreadful alien virus. Although libertarians will just let it rip and get some herd immunity, so everything will be fine. It's not like this is a high horse for me or anything. I should
when we get the first messages saying "help us," where people are beginning to eat each other, do we help them on Mars, or do we just? Sorry, you're breaking up. Can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Libertarianism in that case will be a self-solving problem.
Well, talking of problems, the world's in a bit of a pickle at the moment with the global pandemic. But Tesla has released its Securities and Exchange Commission filing, and in this filing, they've actually outlined its earn targets for the next year or so. And Eric Schilling, who's a writer over at awesome Aussie-based tech site Gizmodo, has written a recent story on this. And what he's pointed out is that Tesla is about to go pedal to the metal. While everybody else is sort of like, holding back, just weathering the storm, Tesla is going pedal to the metal because they have to. Basically, Eric says that the report says that the projected targets mean that Tesla needs to bring in $280 billion annually. And in order to be able to do this, it needs to get its Austin, Texas plant up and running. That's where the Tesla Semi will be produced, and which is supposedly coming out next year. They've only just broken ground there too, so that the factory hasn't even been built. And that Semi, in order to be able to hit that mark, the Semi is going to have to be a huge success, and so is the Cybertruck, which is also supposed to be coming next year. And Model Y and Model 3 are going to have to sell better too. So, look.
Can you imagine buying a car that comes out of that plant, like the Semi, right? Imagine if it does come out in 2021, right? So the plant wasn't even finished at the beginning of the year, and you've bought a brand new car that's come out of it in Q4. How much testing do you reckon they've done on that production line?
Well, not a lot. We know that a lot of Tesla testing is a lot
it's done by consumers.
Well, it's Silicon Valley. It's the Silicon Valley model, isn't it? They roll that out in beta mode so that the consumer testing is done. They patch it up. They fix bugs, and then the second generation comes out.
Yeah. Oh, what? It's rusting. Oh, we got a software update for that.
Yeah. The thing is, it's a 480-ton semi-trailer truck going down a highway. You kind of want it to be right from the outset. We'll fix that later. Talking of fixing later, let's talk about the share price for Tesla. It's currently at $407.90 US. That's down from 422.64 this time last week. Now, if you go back a year ago, it was almost $500 a share. So, look, Tom and Peter, would you think of buying any Tesla shares at the moment? We know that James Cleary, our usual host, is actually thinking about buying one share for like $400. Now, I don't know whether this is JC Googling drunk at night, but look, we've all been there. Would you be interested in buying a share, Peter?
No, American tech stocks are Bitcoin.
Yeah. You reckon?
It's all about capital growth, and if you don't get it, you're screwed.
Tom, do you already have shares in Tesla?
Can you imagine unironically?
There was a pause. You paused.
No, can you imagine unironically buying shares in Tesla? Like it'd have to be a meme, right?
I know plenty of people who got in $100 and they've.
Oh yeah, if you get it, like if you got in before, like it's like okay, whatever, like. And back then you might have made the argument, they're doing something different and whatever, But now it's like when the company is valued at what is it, like 4 times all of the American manufacturers combined or something? It's like
market cap is $390 billion. More
like,
than Toyota.
That's not what they're worth. That's just not what. That's all speculation now. So no, I don't have any Tesla shares.
No, I don't intend on having as I always say, it's because it's on the NASDAQ and the douche bros apply their thinking to this product rather than the real world.
Yeah.
Look, it might be a good time to buy anyway. I know nothing about shares, but the Washington Post. We're
going to need like a disclaiver on this. Like,
exactly.
We are not.
Richard, Peter, and Tom are not qualified to give out financial advice.
We really are.
We've got the election, the US elections coming up on November 3. It's Trump.
Oh, really?
Versus,
is that happening?
It's happening. You might. There's a guy called Donald Trump, and he's up against a guy called Joe Biden. The boss of America challenge. Whoever wins gets the lead. The Washington Post is reporting that November 3 election is causing a sudden drop in the stock market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 9% since September 2. So there's a big sell-off going on, a bit of a fire sale.
Isn't it like massive civil unrest either way?
Yeah.
Like all three ways. All 3 ways. Like Trump wins civil unrest, Biden wins civil unrest, or it's undecided for months civil unrest.
Also, if Biden wins, companies might have to pay some tax. Oh no! The share price.
Well, look, who knows what's going to happen in this election? I mean, look, if you're in the future now watching this or this, actually, of course you are. You're in the future. We're not doing this live. Look, we hope everything has worked out well. That the riots and the burning has stopped. That the alien overlords are being kind to you.
The Tesla share price is normalized.
That's right.
They've probably relocated their headquarters to Mars for a tax-free environment by now. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, with that, we have reached the finish line. I want to thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Anderson, Peter Anderson.
My pleasure.
And thank you to the only officially endorsed Christopher Walken impersonator, Mr. Pritchard, for his precision, his patience, and his determination. Today, he's wearing a painted orange jack-o'-lantern pumpkin outfit for Halloween, but the heat in the studio is causing the paint to run, and it's not a pretty sight. Anyway, look, please pass on the word about the podcast. Let us know your thoughts by searching for CarsGuide on Facebook and Instagram using the hashtag CG Podcast, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. Now, if you're an Apple Podcast listener, please rate and review us. And remember, you can watch us on YouTube too. Now, look, before we go, James normally ends with a joke. So, look, being Halloween, I thought I'd tell a bit of a scary joke. So if children are listening, just be mindful that it could get a bit scary here. It's a joke.
Well, it's intended as a joke, whether it's funny or not.
It's not. It might. Well, you can decide. Here we go. What does a panda ghost eat? Well, bamboo. Now, get it? Bamboo, like boo, scary.
Yeah.